ICC UAE makes it possible.
Welcome everyone to ICC UAE Business Brief, where one of our expert members will brief you on an important and current issue impacting your business in the UAE right now. Today our expert member, Manu Palarchal, CEO and partner, Emirates Chartered Accountants Group, will brief you on the economic substance regulations in the context of doing business in the United Arab Emirates. You're very welcome, Manu. So Manu, I have three questions for you. Number one, can you explain to me in simple terms what are the economic substance regulations known as the ESR? Number two, give me specific examples of requirements to comply with the ESR. And three, what are the next steps you recommend so that our members and partners can ensure compliance and proper recording and reporting under the economic substance regulations? Manu.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent. This is indeed a very important subject for any business conducting relevant activities in the UAE. To answer the first question, what are the economic substance regulations? Simply put, economic substance regulations are what they say on the tin. Any license holder in the UAE must have substance of operation in the UAE itself for the business they record in the UAE. Technically, the economic substance regulations are global standards set by OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They target harmful tax practices, which basically requires companies to have substantial activities in a particular jurisdiction.
So the UAE is fully compliant with international standards, okay? But can you tell me exactly who do the economic substance regulations apply to in the UAE? Or is that a fair question?
Yeah, Mr. Vincent, that is very important and fair question now. To whom the economic substance regulation is applicable? We should know it.
Yes.
The regulation will be applicable for all license holders who are registered in the UAE, that is in the mainland, free zone, financial free zones, or UAE offshore, but conducting certain activities. They are called relevant activities.
What are the key sectors or activities impacted by the economic substance regulations, the ESR? The key sectors.
9 relevant activities are banking, insurance, investment fund management, lease finance activity, then companies doing shipping activity, headquarter business, holding company activity, intellectual property business, and last, distribution. Any company who are doing any of this activity, then economic substance regulation will be applicable. Then only economic substance regulation will be applicable. Hope it is clear for you, the list of the relevant activities.
Yeah, no, very clear, Manu. And but before you go on, so the ESR is not applicable to general trading companies and service companies, of which there are many in the UAE. Can you clarify?
Okay. Glad you brought that to here for the discussion. Not exactly correct. Service center business means it is service activity. So any company registered in the UAE which is conducting trading activity or service activity, in certain cases the law will be applicable.
Very good, Manu. Can I just push you a little bit? Can you please give me, for example, an example or two?
Sure. With an example, it will be more clear.
Yeah.
For example, suppose I'm running a trading company in the UAE.
Okay.
For trading purpose, I am buying goods from overseas, maybe from my head office or branch or any related companies from overseas. I am bringing goods to UAE and selling. And another point, another example, Emirates Chartered Accountants.
Yep.
We are into service and we have offices outside UAE as well. So it may be a branch or head office or related company, anything, subsidiary or anything like that. Suppose our company in UAE is giving any service to overseas related party.
Okay.
Then again the law will be applicable. So the law, in short, the law is applicable even for trading companies which are having business with connected persons. Hope these two examples are clear, and then it shows how the law is applicable for trading companies.
Very helpful, Manu. I'm with you now. But then that brings us to the second question. What is the economic substance test? So Manu, dare I say, how does a business pass this economic substance test?
That is the most important point for any company which has to look into.
Okay.
Because if the law is applicable for a company who's doing business in the UAE, they should make sure that economic substance test is met. They should get a positive result out of this test. Then only they will be successful to comply with the regulation. We categorize these economic substance regulations. A company which is running in the UAE should have sufficient employees. The employees should have sufficient adequate qualifications to do that operation. The business should incur operating expenses in the UAE itself. It should have sufficient assets in the UAE. The board meetings should conduct in the UAE itself physically. You may ask in COVID situation how it will happen, but as per the regulation, the physically the board meeting should conduct in the UAE itself. So there are many requirements like that. So if you give me time, I will take a lot of time for explaining that one. So
I'm sure you could talk about this, Manu, for 3 days. Okay, clearly this is very important subject. And no doubt there are implementation requirements, reporting requirements, and possibly penalties for non-compliance. Actually, are there penalties for non-compliance?
Of course, for economic substance regulation, the penalty ranges from 10,000 to 50,000. Is repeated, non-compliance is repeated, then it may go up to 300,000 if we do appropriate action on time. That is, the compliance of the regulation, follow the regulation within time, then we can avoid the penalties as well.
What actions should be taken by the people, by the participants viewing this broadcast?
A company who's doing any relevant activity should file the notification before the due date.
Okay.
They should conduct economic substance test and make sure that they get a positive response in that test. And then they should submit the economic substance return as well before the end of the financial year. Really, there should be a financial expert or legal expert in the organization to do this check. If one doesn't have in-house expert, of course, they have to rely on they have to outsource those kind of experts. So for that, definitely, even as an example, Emirates Chartered Accountants, we have a big team in economic substance regulation itself as experts who support the business community in the UAE, and we are happy to support our ICC UAE members.
That is very good to know, Manu. But what are the next steps you recommend for, as you mentioned, the members, partners, and other businesses in general?
Our responsibility to the business community, we conduct regularly webinars. Every month, 2 or 3 webinars we conduct, and it is the next webinar is, I think the schedule is on 12th August. Yeah, 12th August, the coming Wednesday. And then another one is there on 26th August. So monthly 2 or 3 webinars we conduct. And this content-rich events are provided on a complimentary basis to ICC members, partners, and other business community.
What wonderful idea, Manu. As always, wonderful news. And you and your team are always ready to play your part, which is especially important in these challenging times. Actually, this cooperation is what ICC is all about, the International Chamber of Commerce, the international connected community. The details of the webinar can be found below. Participants, please take your time to register. A special thank you to you, our participants, our viewers, our members, and stay safe and take care. ICC UAE Business Brief.
ICC UAE makes it possible.